little too convenient, aren't they? Sometimes it's good to take a step back and ask some hard questions. After all, the Biden administration is asking you, an awful lot of you who are watching right now, go ahead, pay more for everything in your house. Pay 30% more for your rent. Pay more for your electricity bills. Pay more for your gasoline. How much more are you paying? Let me know in the comments below for just about everything. President Biden, though, calls it Putin's price, right? It's Putin's price hike. Putin is to blame. You're expected to be totally fine with that. We are sending billions of dollars in weapons to fight a proxy war against Russia. Hey, Clayton, don't ask tough questions about this. Haven't you seen the hashtag stand with Ukraine? You're not being a good sheep. You need to be a sheep. You need to fall in line. Oh, right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. Okay, I won't ask stupid questions. Instead, I'd rather just follow the money, because when you follow the money, you get all the answers that you will ever need in life. So let's follow the money in the story, shall we? Every day, at 5 p.m., something very interesting happens at the Department of Defense. It's like clockwork. Every day at 5 p.m., this happens, which is they release a list of brand new contracts. That's right. They publish a list of all of the defense contracts that are awarded for that day. Yes, every day they announce hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts. It's easy to see. You just log on to defense.gov and you can see the list for yourself. Every day at 5 p.m., some of the very same names seem to appear on this list. Northrop Grumman, look at that. $88 million they received on that day. You might recognize some other names on this list that get a whopping load of money. You might see, like, Raytheon. Here's Raytheon. Look at that. $482 million on that day. Here's under the Navy. Lockheed Martin, another $396 million. Every day, come rain or shine, these lists get published, and they continue to make money day after day after day. So in the year 2020, which is like a year and a half ago already, if you can believe that, Lockheed Martin, before we had a war with Ukraine, got $75 billion in government contracts. Not paid out all at once, of course, but paid out in multi-million-dollar daily contracts like we just showed you. And you heard me right, $75 billion. Now, for a frame of reference, the U.S. State Department's budget for 2020 was $44 billion. Let me put that up here on the screen. This is the State Department's budget for 2020. This same year, $44 billion. So think about that for a minute. The department in Washington that is largely responsible for diplomacy gets half as much funding as one company got, Lockheed Martin, to build Black Hawk helicopters and other weapons of death. They are responsible, the State Department is, for ambassadors and embassies around the world. I mean, we like to say that they're really a department of peace, I guess we could give them that pass. But they get half as much as Lockheed Martin, on the other hand, which makes Black Hawk helicopters and all sorts of advanced weaponry to kill other human beings. So naturally, they would make twice as much money as the peacekeeping department. Those people over at the embassies who are doing all the piecing. Of course, someone is paying for all of these weapons, and of course, it's you, the American taxpayer. You work hard every day so that Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, Boeing, and Lockheed Martin can make advanced weapons that we ship around the world. And as we reported last week, the Pentagon admits that they really have no accounting of where these weapons go once they leave the United States. You remember that story? It falls into a black hole, and we really don't know where they go. It's the fog of war, they say. Well, how convenient, right? But that's okay, because they will be replenished with more taxpayer dollars, continuing this virtuous circle of making money. And last week, the CEO of Raytheon, Greg Hayes, admitted that most of the weapons at the Department of Defense are simply stockpiles and will need to be replenished, which of course is excellent for business, as he expects profits to go up thanks to war. Here is Greg Hayes, the CEO of Raytheon, telling us why he doesn't feel badly about this at all. This is just the business of war.
Apology for that. I think, again, recognizing, we are there to defend democracy. And the fact is, eventually, we will see some benefit in the business over time. Everything that's being shipped into Ukraine today, of course, is coming out of stockpiles, either at DOD or from our NATO allies. And that's all great news. Eventually, we'll have to replenish it, and we will see a benefit to the business over the next coming years.
It's all great news. Way to go. It's all great news. And we will have to replenish all of that. So we don't really give a rat's ass where these weapons go. If we make them, you lose them, you're going to come back and order more anyway, so we don't really care. I mean, 90% of their entire profits, all of their revenue comes from the Pentagon, or more importantly, from you, the taxpayers. While you're struggling to pay rent and can't pay your gasoline or heating bills. But good news for Greg Hayes. Of course, they're doing great. Profits are up. War is wonderful. And now our 20-year war in Afghanistan has come to a completion. We need a new war or a new proxy war, whatever you want to call it, to enrich these pieces of garbage. And we certainly don't want to fight war on our own soil. Just listen to Congressman Adam Schiff, who sums it up nicely about why we have these wars on foreign soil.
The United States aids Ukraine and her people so that we can fight Russia over there and we don't have to fight Russia here.
Of course, that's exactly what they do. And of course, today we learned that even more weapons and more resources are being sent to Ukraine. And the Secretary of Defense himself just paid a visit, as we mentioned. Warships are amassing on the Finnish border. I'm sure you've seen these headlines. Just for training exercises, nothing to see here. They can just play some war games. Nothing to see here. Nothing at all to worry about. Don't pay attention. But of course, all of this comes with a price. And it's something we're not allowed to talk about. It's something that has largely been whitewashed by the American media and the Western media. And that's the amount of debt that Ukraine now holds in Western banks and the International Monetary Fund. So on shows like this, I like to shit all over the defense contractors who make billions of dollars from the U.S. taxpayers. But even worse, perhaps, is the international banks that are making it all possible. You see, wars are costly, and in the case of Ukraine, they will need money and resources to rebuild their buildings, their bridges, their schools, which have largely been destroyed. Their military needs to be rebuilt because, it's run by mostly Nazis, as we've reported. Their culture, their currency, their museums, their way of life, all of that. But you know how you can do that is you can take out loans to Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, International Monetary Fund, and Chase Bank, all of those. They're happy to give you loans, and that's exactly what they've done. All of these loans will keep you in permanent debt to the United States and Western allies. You will get to do our bidding because we literally own you, quite literally. And one way for us to truly stand with Ukraine would be to ask all of these Wall Street banks to wipe away Ukrainian debt plus the interest that they're paying. In fact, this idea has been floated by a few people over the past few weeks. Yes, in fact, even the Financial Times asking the question. Ukraine recovery needs a debt write-off and help from the EU and China, right? And they took an old woman holding a bag of groceries as their photo behind a burned-out building, but quickly ignored. Banks don't want to have anything to do with it. It was immediately ignored and written off as crazy talk. Even for a prosperous nation, these debts are nearly impossible to repay. The British government learned this the hard way a few years ago. Britain finally managed to pay off its war debt to the United States government from World War II. Hey, we're your ally, right? We're going to come here and help. We're going to help liberate Europe. We're your friends, right? No. We have a loan, and you'll pay us back for our help. The United Kingdom has one of the largest economies in the world, and it took them 70 years to pay off their debt, even before the war broke out. The Ukrainian government, which was set up by the United States in 2014, took on international monetary debt in excess of $22 billion because we told them to. All of this debt has interest, by the way. And in the past few weeks alone, the International Monetary Fund approved a new round of loans to the Zelensky government. And all of the major banks came to the aid out of the kindness of their own hearts because banks just love to help, right? And they've stepped in to loan money to a war-torn region that they can pay back over time with interest. And it's not just the Ukrainian side that banks are making money off of. Nope. In fact, these banks are making money off the sanctions placed on the Russian government by President Biden, thanks to some very nicely created loopholes. So when the Biden administration put sanctions on Russian debt, basically on the major financial institutions of Russia, they left open a window for big banks to climb right through. U.S. banking institutions are banned from trading Russian debt with those Russian banks that have been sanctioned, but not banned from what's called secondary trading. This part is incredibly fascinating. So if that debt was already issued to somebody else and they want to sell it to a U.S. buyer, they can do exactly that. Watch this.
Holder of Russia to a U.S. buyer. Goldman Sachs is acting as a brokerage, and the government, the Biden administration, has left that loophole open with the basic idea that companies here in this country, institutions in this country that hold Russian debt ought to be able to get rid of it.
Na klar, versteh schon. Ihr seht diese süßen...
Oh, okay. So put another way, Goldman Sachs and other banks are going out and pitching these trades for anyone looking to buy something cheap in a crisis. They're selling Russian bonds. And when you buy those Russian bonds, you are lending money to Putin's government. And when you buy Russian corporate bonds, you're helping Goldman Sachs make money. And you help Russia succeed. These loopholes are placed there by the Biden administration on purpose to make sure that the banks make money, to make sure that the military-industrial complex makes money. And you are not allowed to call attention to it. Just shut up, be a sheep, and remember the hashtag stand with Ukraine. I mean, the fact that these loopholes are in place and that and no one's doing anything about stopping the banks from profiting off of it, I mean, is exactly the problem here. And if you look at sort of the circle of life of all of this stuff, you know, you have the military-industrial complex, which, of course, you know, makes their money from the Pentagon, paid for by you, the taxpayers. And then, of course, once that money is depleted, the big banks come right in on top of it. And it's just this big circle that just continues. And who gets screwed? The American people get screwed. Or not just the American people, the European people. Look at the Canadian people today who are also getting screwed. The world Western people get screwed.
Well, when you look at this confluence of spending, right, and then you think back to recent history, you know, the CARES Act was $2.2 trillion. Like, that's not a lot. And we argued tooth and nail over it. So when you think about what the priorities are, right, like no one says boo about this type of spending. Yet this was major news, and what we are supposed to see, right, is non-involvement. But that's not what this is.
Right. No, it's you know, it's the worst kind of I don't know how.
Well, it makes total sense then why we are only allowed to see media that shows our involvement as the white hat. Right. Even just yesterday, my father and his wife were visiting, and we were kind of talking about politics, as we inevitably do, but should not do, at family dinners.
Right.
And they were like, "Well, the whole world is against Putin." I was like, No, that's just what we are allowed to think, right? There are many
Western
countries.
media publications who are run by these companies, these billionaires, these corporatists who run the narrative. Of course,
right.
You know, you have to ask yourself the question, like, why? Why before February were you allowed? Like, before February of this year, Western media was covering Ukraine and it was pointing critically,
right?
Covering the fact that their military is led by Nazis. I mean,
the fact that yes, Ukraine was going into Crimea over a year ago, right? Like, this was not hidden from us the way it is now. And Russia does in fact have allies, but we are not. They get no headlines, they get no press time, right? But those are countries that we would be worried about if. I'm going to put a big pin in if this escalates.